what we've seen with some of our user organizations is that folks are taking more time off than they previously did. And I know that's probably going to make some members of the audience raise their eyebrows, because isn't the whole point to make sure people are like working better, working more productively? Yes, absolutely. But especially in the context of the United States, where, compared to folks in Europe, we don't have nearly as much paid time off as you all get across the pond.
Huh?
So the work culture in American companies is a lot more like head down on desk. You have to be
Yeah.
working 24/7, and that's why discussions of burnout and high rates of attrition are a lot more prevalent in American workplace discourse than they might be for other countries.
That's the voice of Jamie Albaum. Jamie is one of the 3 founders of Kellotime, and she discovered something interesting while working with mission-driven companies. Many of their employees feel overloaded and burned out, not because they're working too hard, but because a large part of their work is invisible. In episode 143, Jamie and I dive into the world of invisible labor. We explore how it creates burnout and hides structural bias, and why making that hidden workload visible is critical for building healthier companies. By listening to this episode, you'll learn why burnout starts in the gap between assumed workload and real workload, how time tracking helps founders spot overload before burnout happens, and what the data reveals about gendered labor patterns and recognition. Plus, you'll hear how real workload data impacts pricing, fundraising, and project management in ways you may not expect. So, when you're ready to learn how to build a healthy company by tackling invisible labor and startup burnout, here's my conversation with Jamie Albaum. Jamie Albaum from Kellotime. Good afternoon to you. Welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. Good to have you. Let's start with some background. How did you get to build Kellotime?
DJ, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here on the Women Disrupting Tech podcast. I'm seriously very honored. This is such a great question, and I actually love telling folks this story, so I'm glad that we can kick off this way. My colleagues and I actually ended up building Kello because we were responding directly to a client need that we encountered at the time. We all met and began working together at a business operations consulting firm, and we worked specifically with small businesses, nonprofits, broadly speaking, mission driven organizations, and we helped them with everything to do with business operations. We were working with a client one time who came to us because they were dealing with a problem related to their staff. Their staff were experiencing high levels of burnout, high levels of attrition. They weren't able to basically get a handle on keeping staff at the organization. So they were losing institutional knowledge, critical skills. It was not a good situation for them. So, when my team and I began to do a little digging into what was the cause of these problems that they were facing, we realized that fundamentally there was a really big discrepancy between how many hours folks on that team were actually working and the amount of time that members of the leadership of the organization thought they were spending doing work. So you had staff members who were working crazy hours, more than 60 hours a week, sometimes up to 80 hours a week, like really, really approaching burnout, and a leadership team who was kind of blind to all the work, all the invisible labor that their staff members were conducting. So we came to the leadership team and told them about this problem, and we recommended to them that they implement a timekeeping system so that they could keep better tabs on exactly how much time their staff members were working in a given day, week, month, what have you. And the leadership team recognized the need to get the data on hours worked so that they could get a better, more concrete understanding of the problems so that they could implement a data informed solution. But given the culture of the organization, implementing an organization wide timekeeping system was not something that they knew would go over well with the staff. And we understand. I mean, entering time in timesheets is one of the most laborious processes. It's something that I myself am guilty of having forgotten to do on a frequent basis, and then I'm left hanging at the end of a week or at the end of a
Yeah.
month, having to
Yep.
remember all the work that I
Yep.
did the week or month prior to put it in. It in and of itself takes so much time to complete.
Yeah.
So we
Absolutely.
understood where they were coming from. And we said to
Mm.
them, that's no problem. Why don't we go ahead and build a system from the ground up that's going to work even culturally with your organization? Let's build a timekeeping system that is flexible to your organization's needs, to the culture and personality of your team members, but that also gives you the specific data, the insights you'll need to understand where this discrepancy in perception of working hours is coming from in the first place. So Kello's chief technology officer, Julia Greger, actually went ahead with this idea, ran with it, and built a meticulous system of spreadsheets, wherein there was a master spreadsheet that now serves as the Kello dashboard. And each was connected to a spreadsheet that was an individualized timesheet for each member of this organization's team. So each staff member would be able to log their time, and it would automatically sync to the master spreadsheet/dashboard and show the difference between actual number of hours worked and estimated number of hours that each employee's supervisor thought they would spend on each project. So we had this beautiful system of far too many spreadsheets than any one person should ever have to deal with in their life. And we implemented it for the client, and it ended up working for them. And we obviously worked together. It was a bit clunky at first, especially working with so many different documents, but they got into a good rhythm with the implementation plan and communications plan that we had set them up with. And they were able to get the insights that they needed to finally get a better understanding of what was causing burnout. And it resulted in really important changes for the culture of the organization and reduced the burnout that folks were experiencing. So when we saw that it worked for them, we kind of had a light bulb moment, my team members and I, and we said, if this is working for this one client, chances are that they're not alone in having this problem. And maybe if there are a few other organizations that are experiencing similar challenges, our system could work for them too. So we thought, let's do a little bit of market research and see how widespread this issue is. And it turns out our hunch was right. There are a lot of organizations, especially small businesses and nonprofits, where this issue with invisible labor, working so many hours, a lot of those hours going unnoticed by supervisors and members of leadership team, it's more widespread than we thought. So when we realized that this problem was something that we could potentially fix, we took our system of spreadsheets, we approached a developer and said, could you help us make this into something that is user friendly, that looks beautiful, that could really be a bona fide tool and a useful platform for small businesses, nonprofits of all sectors across all industries to be able to use to get a handle on this challenge. And
Yeah.
that's exactly how we ended up building Kello.
Cool. So there's one thing I want to double click on. What I'm hearing you say is that actually you found a problem by identifying that data, or in this case, time wasn't logged anywhere.
That's right.
So the management didn't have any visible or didn't have any view on what was causing the problem.
Right.
Usually, if you hear it now, like in the 2025,
Hmm.
the immediate hunch you get, or at least that I got,
Hmm.
is, oh, this has to do with office culture
Hmm.
and not necessarily with time. So I was wondering if you could double click why you focused on the time part as a solution to get the culture in place rather
Yeah.
than fixing the culture. And then what triggered that you didn't tell management, hey, you need to have a conversation with these people about how much time they actually spend?
Right. For us at Kello, our ethos is that we are data driven and human centered. So we understand that quantitative data is going to tell a really compelling story and numbers are not going to lie. And for this particular client, we knew that we could make a better case for the cultural changes that needed to transpire if we had the numbers to back it up. And when we were interviewing members of the staff, we kept hearing the same refrain over and over again. I am working way more hours than my supervisor or my manager thinks that I am working. And when we were asking them how that was making them feel, they told us all these stories of feeling like they were burnt out, feeling like their work wasn't being recognized or valued. And then we sort of took all of those steps back to figure out what is the causality here. And we realized if we're hearing all of these concerns from staff members about working too many hours, we need to be able to show that to the members of this organization's leadership team so that we have those concrete figures in place to show them that there is a real problem at the organization that has cultural implications at the workplace.
Okay, so you used the time to actually quantify the problem
That's correct,
for them
yes.
and to make it visible, like this is why you need to make changes in the culture and this is how you start.
Exactly. One other thing I'll add too is that for a lot of small businesses, and even in the nonprofit sector specifically, the need to keep time is not a very prevalent one. Usually, folks who work in the private sector or who work in a lot of billable projects or in billable industries, they're very used to timekeeping and having to keep meticulous records of all hours or minutes worked. I know if there are any lawyers in the audience, some of you are used to billing by the 6 minute or even minute by minute increment. But for a lot of small business owners or even nonprofits, that's a very unfamiliar practice. So, but what we realized as we kept going with this one particular case with this original client is that it's very useful for businesses of all types and sizes to have this really important time data because you can start to understand how the employees at your organization are using your time. And with that data, you can make so many better informed decisions about how to adjust your resources, how to manage labor as an instrument of capital so much more effectively, how to impose better cultural practices within your organization. It really is a powerful first step for a lot of business leaders to then take a leap from.
Yeah. So you talked already a bit about what's happened at the first client as a result of the gap between the hours management was thought they were spending versus the actual number of hours.
Mm-hmm.
What happens inside other teams? What did you, because you interviewed as part of the business case, you interviewed other companies. What did they see?
What we ended up seeing was effectively a pattern. And we knew that what we had witnessed with that first client was not just a one off. So, this notion of staff members feeling overworked and members of leadership or supervisors not really having a strong grasp on how many hours people are actually working, or importantly, the invisible labor that people are engaging with to keep an organization operable, afloat, all of those things were going unnoticed. So the burnout that we heard from staff members at our first client, that was something that we started to pick up on when we were doing a little bit more of our market research. High levels of attrition, similarly, also a symptom of widespread feelings of burnout within a particular team. We started to notice that amongst other clients that we began to investigate as part of our market research. So when we picked up on this pattern amongst similar organizations, namely our target market of small businesses and nonprofits, we realized that a tool to centralize this timekeeping data and what we end up at Kello calling the capacity percentage or the capacity differential, that's the difference between the actual number of hours worked and the estimated number of hours worked. We realized that that tool is something really important for businesses of this type to be able to understand the cause of some of these really common problems and to give them ideas about how to address it.
Yeah. So you indicated that it leads to burnout or feelings of burnout. What does this look like in practice? What kind of words do people use?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I can even speak to from personal experience. When someone is feeling burnt out, their motivation decreases significantly. Their ability to focus also becomes more wavered and more uncertain. And you lose your ability to show up with the utmost ability to engage in your work on a daily basis. And when you lose that sense of engagement, you start to feel resentment towards your job, towards your boss, towards the company that you're working for. And that's when that resentment starts to harbor and people start to look for opportunities elsewhere. We always like to say at Kello that for any company or organization, your most important asset is your people, the people who are doing the work every day. So it actually makes the best business sense, in our opinion, to do what you can as a business owner, business leader, to take care of your people, because your people are the ones who are doing the work on the daily basis to drive your mission forward, to accomplish your quarterly, your annual goals. And when you take care of your people, and ensure that they're working in a work environment that fosters high motivation, that
Mhm.
fosters engagement, that fosters high job satisfaction, those folks are going to want to stay and be loyal to your organization. So you're building a really strong repository of institutional knowledge amongst your team members who are demonstrating long term loyalty to the organization. Those are the folks who are going to help your business grow and achieve new heights.
Yeah. Okay. So one question I still have about this is, why didn't this come up through conversations?
With the original client, you mean?
No. So at the original client, what you saw is management expecting that everyone was working 40 hours a week and uh, living happily. And the reality was that they were close to burnout and working 60 to 80 hours. Do you know how it came about that this didn't come up through water cooler conversations, or let's say conversations that people were having on the work floor?
Yeah. If I can be quite honest, in small businesses and small teams specifically, I was alluding before to this notion of invisible labor.
Yeah.
And that is a very, very widespread phenomenon among small businesses, as something that I've just anecdotally observed over my near 10 years of working with businesses of that size. And this goes unnoticed by a lot of business owners and leaders because they are doing 1 million things a minute. And I'm not saying that this is a good thing or a bad thing, but it really just is the reality that when people are really busy, they can get distracted and they can overlook a lot of other tasks. They can overlook the well-being of the people who are working for them because they are so focused on trying to tick off all the myriad things that are on their to-do list every day. Um, so I think that it didn't come up in water cooler conversations because there literally was a blindness, an utter lack of awareness of the actual number of hours that team members were working. And this is something that we even observed, if we're going back to the original client, with those business that organization's leaders, is that they too were working way more hours than they ever thought that they were, because they would be working on something at night as they were putting their kids to bed and not actually considering the fact that those minutes turn into hours, and that actually is part of work. If your brain is focused on your business, then you're working on your business. If you're doing anything other than doing something, engaging in a hobby, spending time with the family, anything that doesn't require you to think for an iota of a second about your business, then you're working. And I think it's that lack of awareness that led to that inability to openly talk about the issues that the organization was facing from the timekeeping standpoint, but what the cultural ramifications were for that lack of awareness. That's why, going back again to why for us, when we were working with that client, it was important to present them with the data. That was so important to us because we could say to them, here, without a shadow of a doubt, we have concrete evidence to support what your staff members have been telling us. We have concrete evidence to support that you yourselves, as this organization's leaders, are not setting a good example for your team members of what a healthy work-life balance should be.
Yeah, I was about to say you also gave them sort of a mirror of their
Absolutely.
own behavior,
Absolutely.
which usually is even more powerful if
For
they see
sure.
like, oh, because actually by extension, if you work like really long hours, you expect others to do that
Mhm.
too.
100%. Culture is set at the top. And if your business leaders are only showing that they work 20 hours a day and that sets the standard of expectations for all other team members, then that broadens to become the overall culture that your organization embodies. And again, for some folks who are out there who absolutely love working and who love to be on it 100% of the time, that's fantastic. I'm certainly not saying that there is a right or wrong way to go about work life balance. It's something that's highly individualized. And I think it's forever going to be a struggle for anybody who holds any kind of employment to be able to find a team, find an organization who will respect the work-life balance needs that each of us bring to our lives on an individual basis. But yeah, at the top, that's where it's set, and that has a trickle-down effect to expectations that are set for all other members of the team.
And this happens in startups a lot, huh? Because
Certainly.
especially the early stage founders, they do something or they work, and uh, just looking at myself and the people I spoke to, they don't see it as work. They see it as sort of their life. This is their mission. This is their legacy. This is what they're supposed to be working on. So if it takes another
Absolutely.
extra hour or 2 or 3 or 4, and it doesn't impede with, let's say, the children.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a founder myself, I that resonates with me personally. I completely understand. And especially when I find myself working really productively and I get into a groove, I can lose track of time and keep going and going and going. But I'm really lucky in that I have a support system. I have family members who can help me pick up slack in other areas of my life that also need attention. With your podcast, especially DJ, speaking to women in the tech industry, this is something that goes unspoken about a lot of the times, and that it's society still imposes the disproportionate burden upon women to manage the household and all the work that comes with keeping up with a home and keeping up with the family. So as female founders, there's an additional layer added to all of the work that we're putting on our own plates. There's, oh, but we have to make sure that we're taking care of the family. We have to make sure that this part of the house gets cleaned today. We have to make sure that the kids get dropped off for one of their millions of activities or sports leagues that they need to. And granted, of course, it's wonderful when folks have the help to do that, but I think that the societal pressure and expectations for women specifically to take on all of that invisible labor, even in 2025, still very much exists.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's absolutely extra burden on
Mhm.
women when it comes to care, duties of care, not only children, by the way, in household, but also care for elderly
Certainly.
family members. Usually
Certainly.
goes to the female side of the equation.
Mhm.
One question before we shift to more into how Kello then
Yeah.
solves the problem. Did you see any in the data that you collected and that you still collect? Do you see that this balance between men and women also back in the data on the number of hours that they work? Or
That's a very interesting question. In the organizations that we researched for as part of our market research and just, examining Kello's current customers, we don't necessarily see that there is a discrepancy in the number of hours worked by gender. But we are still seeing a discrepancy in the projects or the tasks where those hours are logged. We were talking again about invisible labor.
Mhm,
And what we've seen with current Kello users as well is that female identifying members of a team will
mhm.
spend more time taking on operational tasks that support the bottom line of the business and to ensure a positive employee experience for the overall organization, rather than male identifying team members who will pretty much log all of their time to specific project work. That's not to say that the female identifying team members are not still logging that project time, but if folks all only have the same hours of the day, what we're noticing is that this kind of doesn't set up female team members for success because, again, there's that unspoken expectation that they will take on the invisible labor that's required to keep the business afloat, keep the bottom line of the business, at a reasonable state, while still having to accomplish all of their project or external or client facing goals.
Yeah. Do you actually also make that point to clients on that
If we're
disbalance? Like,
Mhm.
hey, this is what we're in addition to this is the gap between what you thought you were spending in terms of hours and this is what you really spent. Do you also give feedback on, hey, this is if we look at populations, this is what they spend their time on, or this at least this is what they log their time.
Most definitely. For us at Kello, transparency is the name of the game. And I was talking before about how our ethos is data driven and human centered. And what underlies that is us valuing equity as a pillar of our business, as a pillar of our ethics, and the way that we always want to go about delivering our product and its service to all of our clients and its users. So if we encounter a situation where we're seeing this data in one of our clients, we would be remiss not to say anything, especially if we start to recognize that it's, again, a larger pattern within the organization. We
Mhm.
understand that if we're seeing this data, like I've said before, it has cultural implications that can negatively affect the business overall, negatively affect the business from even a productivity standpoint and a profitability standpoint. As I mentioned before, it makes good business sense to take care of your people and to have a human centered culture at the core of your organization or your company. So, if we're finding through the data that we're collecting that one of our client users is going down a road that might not be beneficial for them, we're going to say something and work with them as needed to implement any recommended changes so that they can get ahead of any consequences.
Let's shift to what Kello then actually does. How does it work? Where does it start? Where does it end?
Absolutely. So, for most users, it's a very simple and user friendly timekeeping system wherein you log in, you can see a very user friendly dashboard with all of the projects that you've been assigned to. And then you have your timesheet where you can log the time that you spend working on all the projects to which you are assigned. But one thing that makes Kello as a timekeeping system stand out from other timekeeping systems on the market is that with Kello, you don't just have the one option of logging your time on a daily basis. You can log your time in weekly or even monthly increments. And this is a really effective tool for organizations who are new to timekeeping as a human capital management process. You can start off by asking your team members to provide general estimates for the number of hours that they work on certain tasks or projects in a month. Then you increase that frequency to a week, and then you can increase it to daily. This is also really helpful if organizations don't need such explicit detail
Mhm.
in number of hours per day across projects. If they just need a general estimate of how team members are spending their time across different projects, tasks, departments, etc., then being able to lessen the timekeeping task burden on team members by having them do it less frequently is a way to get people more or better acquainted with the idea of doing something new as part of their workday. It increases the buy-in of trying to implement a new process and system into people's already busy days.
Yeah. So how do you make that distinction if I need it or not? Really the granularity in the data on an hourly basis or
Yeah,
on a weekly or even monthly basis.
that's where we, as members of the Kello team, will speak directly with new client users and we will provide recommendations that are suited to the needs that they express to us. And what's very easy with the Kello platform is that it can always be changed. So let's say a new organization comes to us and they say they want to use Kello, but they're really unfamiliar, or their team members have never used a timekeeping system before. Well, then we might recommend that they start with the monthly frequency of timekeeping. And if after even just the first month, we find that it's not working for them very well, we can adjust, and in a matter of seconds, we can change their frequency. None of the previously recorded data is going to go away. There's absolutely no disruption to the usability or the operability of the platform. And then we can even revert. If we find that the weekly frequency is too much, we can go back to monthly. So it's all that the heart of Kello and the platform itself was the user experience. We wanted it to be as seamless and easy as possible for folks to use, and we wanted it to be flexible to organizations' changing, ever changing, and ever evolving needs.
That is what the platform does. What are the benefits that you are seeing?
Definitely. Before I get into some of the benefits that we're seeing, I also want to talk a little bit about some of how the platform works when you are at a manager or an admin level user. So there are different user or account types within Kello. As I mentioned, for most folks who use Kello, they're going to have a basic user type account wherein you see all the projects that you've been assigned to, and then you can log your time. But of course, somebody has to assign you to all of those projects. And that's where the manager and the admin level user types or account types come into play. So in those manager and admin account types, what you're also able to do is you can provide estimated hours for all members of your team across all the projects to which they are assigned. So that's where the ultimate calculation for that capacity differential comes in. If we go back to the example of the original client, remember that they were experiencing a discrepancy between actual number of hours worked and the perception of the number of hours worked by their supervisors and managers. So if we take you and me, to even simplify this example further, DJ, if you are my supervisor and you've assigned me to work on project X, and you think that I'm going to spend 20 hours a week working on Project X. You can go in and enter in Kello that for Jamie, she's going to work 20 hours on Project X this week. But at the end of that week, after I've inputted my time for all the hours I've spent working on Project X, you see that I actually needed to work 30 hours, not 20. The capacity differential is going to light up. And we actually have a really simple color coding system in Kello to identify if you're within if the estimate is really accurate to actual number of hours worked, it's green. If the estimate is, within a 10% differential, it's yellow. Anything above 10%, it's going to be red to say there's a really big misunderstanding and discrepancy here. So if you thought I was going to work 20, but I actually work 30, that's going to show up in your account. It's going to be red, and you're going to realize, okay, maybe I have to go and have a conversation with Jamie and figure out, what actually was worked on this week, what was triggered, and why did I have such a big miscalculation as to how much time it was actually going to take her to get the work done.
Yeah, and usually it's a discussion that you have, not necessarily like in this particular case. I ask you how much hours do you need, but if I'm a good manager, I actually do challenge you. And what the tool actually can provide you with is, let's say, a basis to do that challenge.
Exactly.
To tell you, well, you said you are going to spend 20 hours, but we saw in the previous weeks it's going to be was more like 30. So what makes it it's 20 now?
Exactly.
And it could be.
Yeah. So then you as a manager can make, again, better informed, data informed estimates as to how much time it actually takes to accomplish a project. And what this actually, going back to the original question, what is one of the benefits? What this helps organizations do is be a lot more strategic with new business opportunities. If they're going after some new business and it's a project that the organization has completed already, you have all of the data for how many man hours, how many labor hours it actually takes to get a project like that done. So you know exactly how many hours to quote your new client, how much to charge your new client. You have all that data so that you can go to those new business opportunities armed with that information, and you know how to crunch the numbers so that you can at minimum break even and even better achieve a profit.
Because I think that's also very important. The business side of it. At the end of the day, if you know the number of hours, it makes it possible to avoid unnecessary losses and
Definitely.
unexpected losses
Mhm.
because you underpriced the customer or underquoted the customer. Secondly, it also gives you trust towards the customer because you can actually deliver on time at cost. And thirdly, it also gives you the ability to do decent pricing on projects or products or what have you, and include all the information in there. And then do it actually data based, not let's say, we call it like using your thumb to make up a quote.
Exactly. We have an expression here too about assumptions, and it's quite
Yeah.
crass, but the gist of the saying is that when you making assumptions
Mhm.
is a poor thing to do. So again, that's why having the data that a platform like Kello can give you is so important. Obviously, we just talked about the benefit that it has from, the new business standpoint, from being able to deliver projects for your clients on time and on budget. But it also helps businesses better allocate their human capital resources. Say we want to take on new business at our company,
Yeah.
and we know that let's say, DJ, you're working at my company and you're a really high performer, and I'd like you, DJ, to work on this new project that we just got for this new client. But I can see in your timesheets that you're already kind of maxing out your capacity for work hours in a week. Well, that tells me that it would probably be a really bad idea to add more work to your plate because, again, I don't want to bring you close to burnout in any way. We talked in great length already about the consequences that can arise for companies when they work their team members to the bone and they approach burnout. So if I see from your timesheets, from the data in Kello, that you're already working, hours that are approaching your maximum, what I can do is either assign the new project to a different team member, or I can readjust the projects that are currently on your plate. I can take you off of something else if it's really important to me that you're
Yeah.
put on this new client work.
Yeah.
So I'm better able to manage work across my team members to ensure maximum productivity, minimize likelihood for burnout, and ensure all the projects are completed on time, at cost, and I'm maximizing profitability in the process.
Yeah. And on top of that, it also enables companies, I think, to put a price on the service that they give to a customer post sale.
100%.
Because
Absolutely.
that is one of the things that I saw, at least in my time as a corporate, is that uh, burnout was most prevalent in finance and
Mhm.
in operations.
Mhm.
Why? Because not because the managers didn't care, but because there was no, at least early on, the budget allocation there was tied to the assumption of, okay, it's going to cost about this number of hours, and
Mhm.
they did a lot of calculations on that beforehand, but those were based on assumptions, and they never actually looked at the actuals.
Right. And we know
And
that
if you,
operating on assumptions is a bad thing to do. So that's why I feel like I sound like a broken record. So to your audience, I apologize, but at least we're very consistent here. If you have the data, then you don't have to rely on assumptions and you can make more accurate projections and forecasts. You're able to even build budgets for your company many fiscal years in advance if you have this data and you've collected it over a long enough period of time with consistent use of the platform. If you notice a steady pattern of behavior through the data that Kello is yielding for you, you can create budgets for several fiscal years down the line. So that minimizes the operational and financial burden as well for members of those teams because they're armed with information that can allow them to do their work more efficiently.
Yeah. So one thing that I had personally with time management as an experience is that it sort of feels and sounds like micromanagement. Yes, everyone understands why it needs to be done.
Mhm.
Yes, everyone needs understands why it's sort of helping the bigger, helping myself, but also the bigger picture get better. And still, is someone looking at my hours and looking if I'm really making those 40 hours? Doesn't how do you avoid that discussion?
That's a really good question. We were talking before about how we used data to inform the conversation about culture.
Yeah.
But I think in this particular picture that you're painting, you would need to have the discussion about culture first before going after the data collection. Like I mentioned before, our ethos at Kello is that we are human centered. We want to deliver an equitable experience for all of our clients through the platform as a tool and through the services that we offer. But if the culture at a client organization is one where micromanagement is abundant, then the implementation of a timekeeping system will probably not get a lot of buy-in from the people who actually have to keep their time. And this, unfortunately, is something that is not easy to avoid because you're right. There are some folks who folks can mismanage any tool. And certainly with timekeeping, it can be used with some micromanagers to nitpick the number of hours or minutes that people are spending across their day. So I think that the culture at the organization needs to be one that espouses trust
Hmm.
between employees and their supervisors, and an understanding that if folks are getting their work done with minimal interruptions, minimal problems, people are getting their work done and it's delivered on time and the quality of the work product is satisfactory, then, at least in my opinion, it shouldn't matter how much time it takes people to get the work done or when they're working on it. If folks work better between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m., that's fantastic. If folks work better during traditional 9 to 5 hours, that's fine too. But for me as a business leader and a manager, as long as you are getting your work done on time, and again, if I'm satisfied with the quality of the product, for me, I don't care when you do it or how long it takes. So if that culture of trust is built in, then already I have that accord with my employees where they are more likely to trust that I'm not going to use this tool to micromanage them because that's not a culture at my organization that I've pushed upon them at all. Trust is going to be your strongest foundation to build that culture, to enable your team members to give you the buy-in that's needed to implement these new processes and systems.
Okay. So what are the biggest shifts that you've seen over time after implementing Kello in terms of culture, in terms of maybe company even performance?
Great question. What we've seen with some of our user organizations is that folks are taking more time off than they previously did. And I know that's probably going to make some members of the audience raise their eyebrows because isn't the whole point to make sure people are like working better, working more productively? Yes, absolutely. But especially in the context of the United States, where, compared to folks in Europe, we don't have nearly as much paid time off as you all get across the pond. So the work culture in American companies is a lot more like head down on desk. You have to be working 24/7, and that's why discussions of burnout and high rates of attrition are a lot more prevalent in American workplace discourse than they might be for other countries.
Uh-huh.
But again, ensuring that folks are able to take time off to rest and recharge is statistically found to ensure that when they come back to work, they are better engaged with the work that are doing. They have greater satisfaction with their job, with the organization, because they've been given sufficient time to step away and to rest their brains, rest their bodies, and come back feeling better than ever to attack the problem, attack the mission that any organization is going after. So again, a strange thing to have noticed, and I know folks are going to feel some sort of way about it, but the ability to recognize how hard people are working, how much time they're putting into their work,
Mhm.
and using that to encourage them to take time off, to rest and recharge and come back and perform at such optimal levels has positive impacts on productivity and on profitability.
Yeah, that is proven also in numerous other studies that
Certainly.
even the Bible was clear on that. Thou shalt have one day off.
Exactly. Yes,
It's for a reason.
if the powers that be even needed to take a day off from creating the world, then we should be able to take some time off from our jobs as
Yeah,
well.
that's a very good statement. So, did you see any cultural changes besides the taking more time, encouraging people to take time off,
Oh, definitely.
like the team, let's say the camaraderie, team performance, but also in terms of like well-being increasing.
Absolutely. 100% yes to even all of those examples. It's kind of even like you were there, DJ. Yes, what we've seen is that when armed with this information and when business leaders are able to make these better informed decisions about how to staff people on different projects so that their time is maximized, they again feel like employees can feel like they can accomplish more in a day, which
Mm,
makes them feel really good about the work that they're doing and makes them more ready to show up for work the day after and the day
yeah.
after that. And
Did you
Mhm.
also see changes in management behavior, like them taking more time off or working less long hours because they were like, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna have to log this."
100%. And actually, we were working with one client organization wherein the leader of the organization actually decided to take a month-long sabbatical. And what happened with that was that the organization itself implemented a company-wide sabbatical policy to reward people for their long tenure and loyalty to the organization. So after working at the organization for 5 years, 10 years, 5-year increments after that, you get extended paid time off under the sabbatical policy. So these are really wonderful results with big impacts that we're
Yeah,
seeing from folks, in hopefully large part because of their use of Kello and what it's been able to do to improve their organizational culture, improve the efficiency and how they're working on the day to day, so that if somebody gets to take sabbatical for an additional 2 weeks or even up to a month, there's such a good and productive cadence of work hours going with the other members of the team that folks are able to make really well informed decisions about how to pick up some of the work for folks who are going to be out for that extended period of time, while all reducing burnout, ensuring that people are only working a sustainable number of working hours
yeah,
so that their productivity does not suffer.
yeah. And also their well-being does not suffer.
Absolutely.
So my audience is preliminary founders and investors
Mhm.
who may not perceive that they have a problem yet in their teams, and maybe they don't. Don't get me wrong.
What we as founders, we're all doing great. It's fine. We
Yeah.
are blissfully ignorant, as I like to say.
So, to the founders who are blissfully ignorant, what are three things to watch for to spot these differences between actual workload and quote unquote assumed workload?
I think one of the biggest triggers for when this can start to happen is when you as a manager start to have questions about how much work your employees are doing. If you at any point start to question it, if you start to get these thoughts in your mind of, gee, I wonder what this person is doing all day, or wow, I haven't heard from this person all day. I wonder what's going on. If you're starting to see even like that pattern of minimized communication, that could mean either that somebody is sitting and twiddling their thumbs and maybe needs something to do and is maybe a little bit too intimidated to come and ask, or somebody is just working nonstop that they cannot, in all human possibility, respond to you within 10 seconds. So I would say if you're starting to get those questions, and if those questions are informed by unusual patterns of communication or specifically minimized communication, that's when I would start to maybe think about investigating what that particular person's workload is like, and maybe looking at their timesheet entries in Kello against the estimated hours that you as their manager have entered for their time on all the projects that they've been staffed. Take a look at that data and see if you can back up some of the assumptions that are already starting to form in your head, and use that as an opportunity to have a discussion with that particular employee, with your direct report, let's say, and think about how you can help them use their time better.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say, just to put it really briefly, is if they stop talking, you need to start talking.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. Because again, communicate two-way communication. It's going to build the trust that we talked about earlier, and we know how important that trust is for ensuring productive collaboration, for ensuring that people have what they need to get their work done, and for ensuring that everyone at your company is going to have an optimal work experience working there.
Okay, cool. Are there other things to watch out for? For instance, if you don't have Kello yet to support you?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I would say as a business leader, maintain an open dialogue with the people who are working for you, who for the people with the people who are working with you. A lot of times I've even seen this with a lot of founders. Founders can get all up in their heads. And we as founders, it's our job to constantly try to innovate and think of ways to make our products and services and our tools better. But you have to remember about all the people who are working alongside you to turn your ideas into a reality. And you can't be divorced from all the work that they are doing and from the work environment in which they're making it all happen. So I would say, first and foremost, maintain that open dialogue so that you always have a pulse, a touch point on the working experience of your team members. Because as we've talked at great length already, you want to ensure an optimal working environment and experience for your team so that you all have the energy and the motivation to continue to innovate.
Okay. So then if you see uh, innovation drop, would that then also be? Because ideally, you don't want to rely on metrics like attrition and people leaving. You want to be ahead of that. So if you see innovation going down in a team over time, would that be a signal for people to, let's say, at least start having discussions?
I think
Besides
it,
having that open line, which
right, right. I think it certainly could be because I know, it's one thing for me to say, you as a business leader, or you as a founder, maintain that touch point with your employees. But I know that not everybody not everybody brings people management to the forefront. It's a very unique skill that people have. Everyone can learn it, but not everybody is equipped to be the best people manager. So I
it's
would
not
say
pre-installed in everyone. Let's say.
exactly, exactly. So I think that your proxy metric of analyzing innovation can be a really great way to see, whether your organization is still on the trajectory that it needs to be. If you see that innovation starting to drop, I would caution folks for their first instinct to be to blame folks, to blame the people who are working with them and working for them on the innovation drop. Take a little bit of time to explore the causality. If innovation is dropping, what might be the cause of that? And go all the way back until you find the root source of that symptom that you're noticing.
So you've been building a startup yourself with, I think, 3 female founders.
That's correct. Yeah, it's three of us at Kello.
Yeah. So how do you apply the learnings that you have from building it, from building Kello, and also the experience implementing it with customers and then getting actually showing that there is a problem? How do you apply that inside your own company?
Oh my gosh, this is a great question. I think for me and my co founders, Lauren and Julia, we have another member of our team, our chief marketing officer, Zach. We're a small but mighty team, as a lot of startups are. And we do a really great job holding one another accountable. Again, I think I'm just very lucky in that amongst my co founders and I and our whole Kello team, we are very trusting of one another. And we would be remiss to not practice what we preach. So, again, as we know, as founders, founders can work crazy, crazy hours. But especially for me and Lauren and Julia, if we start to notice, again, by recognizing those communication patterns, if I know that, oh, I haven't heard from Julia in an inordinate amount of time, I'm going to be proactive about reaching out to her and checking in with her, seeing what's on her plate, seeing what's going on. And 9 times out of 10, if I haven't been hearing from her as frequently as I'm used to, it's because she's juggling a million and one things. So I want to be able to intervene and say, okay, what is currently on your plate that maybe can be deprioritized for a bit? What is something that's on your plate that we can offload to somebody else who might have a little bit more flexibility in their schedule right now?
Hmm?
So again,
How do you keep that out of the blame game?
I think for us it's just that we've built that foundation of trust, and
Hmm?
we're also honest with each other. So like if I've ever made a mistake, I know that my coworkers are going to be able to come and tell me that I've made the mistake, and they'll give me the grace of being able to recognize the mistake and to put in the time to correct it and work past it and learn from it and not make the mistake again. Because I, as a business leader, that's the way that I show up for my team members. If somebody makes a mistake, I'm not going to blame them for it immediately. Like, we're all human, nobody's perfect. And I want the people who are working with me to be able to learn from the mistakes, learn from experiences, and by giving them the grace to do so rather than being automatically punitive, again, I'm going to make sure that I'm fostering that positive work culture. It's going to make people more likely to want to work with me. I always want to be someone that people want to work with. I think that's very important, especially as a founder, as an entrepreneur. That's how I'm going to be able to attract the best talent that there is out there. So, being overly punitive is not going to move anything forward.
Yeah, I just heard you give another indicator for that things might be a little bit going off the rails if you're not able to attract the people you want to attract.
Mhm.
That's
Ve
also, I think,
Absolutely, absolutely. If you have a critical vacancy in your organization and you find that you're unable to fill it, I know that, you know, in startup spaces, it's a small world and people talk, and if somebody garners a perhaps negative reputation, that's going to be something that people take note of pretty quickly, and nobody wants to work with someone who's not nice to work.
yeah, true, absolutely true. So I want to shift towards the end of the conversation, Jamie. I'm developing an AI tool for female founders for
Mhm.
fundraising. I was wondering, from your perspective, how much invisible work is going into that?
For you putting together this AI tool?
No, for you fundraising.
Oh my gosh. A lot of it goes unrecognized. For me specifically, I mean, I'm so honored that I had the opportunity to be on this podcast with you, but public speaking does not come naturally to me. So for me, I know I have to take a lot of time before any recording or pitch appearance or meeting to prepare my speaker's notes, prepare myself mentally and emotionally for this kind of engagement. And for me, that can take a couple of hours. But I know that by putting in that preparation, I'm going to feel more confident when I get to that public speaking setting. I'm hopefully going to have a much more fruitful conversation because I've mitigated some of my nerves with all the pre-preparation. So that preparation time, for at least for me, speaking personally, is some of that invisible labor that some folks for whom public speaking comes naturally, they could be able to go up on a stage and deliver their pitch and basically wing it, and it will seem flawless. I need to put in some more time before the pitch actually happens so that I can get to the same level of fluidity and seamlessness that natural public speakers might be able to just get away with.
Okay, so now I'm a bit curious. What are some tips that you have for other people who are not, let's say, uh, crazy about public speaking? How do you prepare mentally? I mean,
Oh my gosh.
the preparing the notes. That's an, well, let's say, an obvious one.
For
But
sure.
yeah,
Preparing your notes, and I'll say practice, practice, practice. I know it's not going to be a piece of advice that pleases everybody because it seems kind of cliche. And I know we're all really busy and practice takes time, but at least for me, it's really been the most effective tool to make sure that I can show up, that I can feel ready, that I can deliver my message with clarity and with confidence, especially as founders when we're pitching our ideas to potential investors. We want to make sure that potential investors understand the problem, they understand the solution, and they understand what the product is all about without any shadow of a doubt. So, practicing your elevator pitch over and over and over again till you feel like you've perfected it is what's going to make you best able to deliver that message with the clarity and confidence that's required.
and I think you've done a terrific job at
Thank
doing
you.
that today.
Thank you. Again, it's a lot of practice. And if I might add another piece of advice,
Yeah.
part of practice isn't just staring in front of the mirror and speaking to yourself. It's maybe stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit, showing up on podcast recordings, just like I am here. This, for me, is a wonderful opportunity for me to share the story of Kello, the facets of Kello with your audience. But for me personally, it's also an opportunity for me to practice the way that I communicate about our business, about my team, about our platform. And each time I'm able to engage with folks like you, DJ, who are so kind to give me this platform, it's my ability to put myself out there out of my comfort zone and continue to refine my communication skills.
Well, glad to have had you. Really enjoyed our conversation, Jamie.
Likewise. Thank you.
If people want to connect with you, learn more about you, and especially learn more about Kello, where would you like to send them?
Definitely. For Kello, you can find us online at our website. That's going to be www.kellotime.com. We're also on LinkedIn at Kellotime, and we're on Instagram at Kello_time. Folks can also find me on LinkedIn with my name, Jamie Albaum. I think I'm the only one with my name on LinkedIn, so it shouldn't be too difficult to find me. But you can always even find Kello through my own LinkedIn profile. And I welcome any direct messages if folks have any questions about Kello or even just want to start a conversation one to one. I'm really excited to hear from any of the folks who are in your audience.
Jamie Albaum, thank you very much for this conversation. We'll include the links in the show notes, of course. Listeners, thank you very much for listening to this episode. And until the next episode, as always, keep being awesome. Thank you for listening to episode 143 of Women Disrupting Tech, titled How a Female Founder Tackles Invisible Labor and Startup Burnout with Jamie Albaum. Jamie and I hope that you had as much fun listening to this conversation as we had recording it. And if you have any questions for Jamie, please leave them in the comments on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts. I do read all the comments and I'll make sure you get an answer. If you want to connect with Jamie or learn more about Kellotime, you can do so via the links in the show notes. As usual, you can find the show notes at the website womendisruptingtech.blog and on my Substack via the links in the caption. If you found this episode helpful, please take a moment to rate and review the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. And if you don't follow us yet, please hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss a future episode. Once again, thank you for listening. I hope to see you in the next episode, and until then, as always, keep being awesome.